So a little bit of project background. Back in, delays. Back in 2017, 2018, Salesforce was looking to try and set their own targets. As we started going through and exploring different ways that they could do that with them, it became clear that we needed to kind of define what this pathway was going to look like, as we didn't really have a lot of clear pathways that existed. And they were growing their footprint pretty significantly. And so when they're setting a target to be, 50% by 2030, what is 50%? Like, what is that actually of? And being able to understand that full picture. The project that we used initially to try and do some quantity takeoffs kind of proved to be riddled with challenges and problems in terms of accurately reflecting the bill of materials. Pulling information or quantities out of the project often meant that we were missing overages and products that were purchased for the project, but maybe not necessarily captured. And then certainly lots of information that's put into the drawings. God knows a lot of times there's materials that just get cut down from their original size and aren't represented in the model based on what they were. So we went down this road of gathering a bill of materials for a project in order to be able to kind of speed this up. And for this one, we had a representative project, Denver, which was 2 floors of their people spaces, gathered everything down to screws and nuts and bolts. At that same time, EC3, or I guess it was before EC3, CLF was developing their methodology to be able to apply uncertainty to the EPD side of things. We recognized that there needed to be a lot more granularity in that data quality, so we started looking into the sector supplement. There also wasn't a connection between all of these different reporting standards that were out there from Greenhouse Gas Protocol and how buildings and embodied carbon actually go into those. And frankly, none of them referenced LCAs or EPDs at the time. So developed a sector supplement, which is not unlike kind of the precursor to 240P, that has some of this uncertainty calculations associated with it. And we ran all of these products through this analysis and this framework. So every single one of them has a data quality analysis matrix like this, including all of the backup documentation of where the information came from and the impacts overall. And we measure everything with and without the uncertainty so that we can talk about both of those things, because you can do reductions by improving data quality just as much as the others. You can see various ways that this was applied. LCAs, EPDs, and PEPs are kind of the highest level of data. The secondary data, you're screening LCAs and industry-wide, sometimes some proxy EPDs that are out there. Sometimes it's getting a bill of materials, really trying to understand where these impacts are. We partnered with WAP in doing this work because for us, it was a way to be able to leverage their understanding of these building systems and the technology, not the technology, but the operational systems that go into producing these. Because they do so many LCAs and EPDs, they have an abundance of data and familiarity with how these systems work and how they operate, and working with those manufacturers to understand those nuances, not to mention a lot of data and information that isn't publicly available for a lot of companies. For things like furniture, creating proxy products associated with things where we did have value, and we can unpack those similarities throughout it, kind of give you an idea of what some of that hierarchy looks like, not kind of lost on what we typically would see. But again, every product had its own uncertainty assessment. So just to kind of pin it all together, interior materials, what you're seeing is kind of without the uncertainty on the left and with the uncertainty on the right. About this one was 187 kind of unique materials that were in that. You can get an idea of how they compared to each other in this particular application. They don't really mean much until we combine them all together with some of the other categories. So this is where the program starts to deviate from, I'd say, other studies that have been done, because we looked at everything. Furniture, again, unpacking all of the pieces and components of this down to rugs and poofs and little vases that are on their shelves. Everything was calculated. So again, 153 unique materials. We actually measured pre and post COVID to kind of understand how differences between having offices versus having more collaborative spaces versus having more less workstations ended up being pretty small of a difference. Then here you can see we got into the MEP ITAV, which was really looking both at not only what was contractor installed, but also what Salesforce was procuring for those particular projects. This one, as you could imagine, was close to 600 materials that were in there, 11 different trades that were integrated. And again, you can kind of see the spread uncertainty analysis on the left with uncertainty on the right. When we combine this data, you can kind of get an idea of how this breaks out. About 46% of this is tied to the MEP. Again, without uncertainty on the left, uncertainty on the right. A little bit more of how some of this breaks out, kind of understanding the 80th percentile of each of these categories. Again, to help us prioritize where the best options for reductions are. This was another way to look at this, kind of in reducing order of magnitude. And what I wanted to point out was when we talk about whole building LCA exercises, often we're focused on, you see these little green highlighted materials that are in here. We're often focused on those in terms of advocating for reductions. But you can see that a lot of other material sources are high on this list that we're not advocating for, that aren't part of these conversations usually. And so finding ways to start to open up this conversation. We did some comparisons overall for how this compared to the core and shell of one of the projects they were doing. This happened to be a tower in Chicago that MKA did the whole building LCA on. So giving an idea of how those two compare to each other. Also looking at how these build up over time, assuming, 5 to 7 year renovation cycles, how that compares to the original build. So again, kind of looking at order of magnitude. I'm not going to linger on a lot of these slides. We have a blog post that actually has all of these in slide format so people can use them and take them. We definitely want people to understand what this issue is and start to talk about it. But if we get back to the 2030 question that our clients were asking, like, what does it mean to get to 50%? We now know what that target is for them, and we can define that milestone. If we look at what it is that we're reducing from a industry perspective right now, if we're just thinking about what is in a whole building LCA and the materials that we're seeing on the interiors of these projects, we're not getting far enough in a reduction to get to that 50% threshold. If we include a 50% reduction, increase that analysis to a 50% reduction across all of those TI materials and a 50% reduction in furniture, we still don't get to that threshold. Now we get to the question of the MEP component of this. And for us, this was really about understanding the cycles of manufacturers and their designs and their understanding of embodied carbon. A whole analysis of this, but we all know that, maybe we all don't know, product cycles don't happen every year. They often are taking 3 to 5 to 7 year cycles for doing product cycles. So manufacturers who are putting out things today often are going to take even more time to be able to engage. It's going to take them time to produce EPDs, understand what the relevance are, start to embed practices that will inform the next design. So the idea that we're going to get there by applying MEP reductions that are going to be close to 50% didn't seem realistic. So we gave it a kind of a conservative estimate of maybe a 25% reduction for MEP, especially considering a 10% grid improvement that could benefit them. And the punchline really is, in order to get there, even if we do all of that 50% across all of those, and we do get the 25% for MEP, we're still not hitting the 50% reduction. We have to get to 72% reduction for interior materials and furniture, again, assuming the same 25% for MEP. So this was really kind of the impetus of like, wow, we've got a lot more effort that needs to take place if we're going to try and hit some of these 2030 targets. And so again, the importance is really about sharing this and communicating this. A lot of clients are just kind of starting to tip their toes into what work looks like. And I don't think that this is the solution that we want to be sharing with them. I think we want more appealing solutions, certainly bio-based solutions and circular solutions to kind of support this type of work.